When I was 12 years old, I was gearing up for an awesome Halloween out with my friends. And at the time, it was still relatively safe for kids to go out, going around the neighborhoods in search of candy and treats without a lot of parental supervision. However, times have certainly changed, and after this incident, I'm not sure I'd ever want my kids out alone at night, especially on Halloween. It was Halloween 1992, Cider Mill Road. It was long and scattered with a lot of houses in the neighborhood, and it was an area that was known for being spooky, mainly because there was an old abandoned house at the end which had lots of swirling ghost stories, and I heard many childhood stories where the legends, and it was an apple orchard years ago and the slaves had been brutally murdered, and the original owner had hung himself at the top of the staircase, and there were so many stories about the town, and the kids were rumored about the house, and that the kids were so intrigued to go and step foot inside it. We would ride bikes by the house in hopes of catching a glimpse into its history. We were really certain that we would find all sorts of paranormal delights. And after trick-or-treating for several hours, almost reaching at the end of the Cider Mill Road, a friend suggested that we go knock on the door of the house and see if anyone answered. We knew an old lady lived there, because after it was soon abandoned, an old lady that goes by Mrs. Murphy. No one ever saw her come out, though. She decided to buy it, and she apparently inherited the property and had lived there probably for 50 years. It was a big house, and it was really odd, especially for someone who doesn't have that much of a family. And I honestly always thought it was kind of lonely and saddening to live there in such a big open house. My dad called it decayed gentry, I think. I honestly don't know, and I honestly had no idea what he meant by it. The driveway winded up through the orchard, which lay sprawling in front of the house, and no one tended to go to the apples anymore because most of them lay rotting on the ground, which by October was more of a rotting stench than apple fragrance. My friend Jessica had said, "Hey, you should go up there and ring on the doorbell." I shrugged and said, "I'm not going there by myself, though." "Well, take Olivia with you," Jessica said. Olivia shook her head. "I don't think it's such a good idea, and it's getting late. I think we should get home." Jessica grabbed her hands. "We'll all go together." "It smells bad," Olivia said. "I don't want to go up there." "Yeah, I agree. And the apples, they stink. And besides, if an old woman lives there, she's probably already asleep and she doesn't want to be bothered by trick-or-treaters." "She doesn't even have the front porch light on," Olivia said. Jessica said, "You guys are such chickens. It's not like there's a sign that says, 'Leave me alone, no trick-or-treaters welcome.'" "Come on, it's Halloween. Let's just do this and then we can go to school on Monday and tell everyone what happened. They'll be like, 'Oh my god, you're the coolest kids in this class.'" Much to my dismay, we were being led further up the dark gravel driveway to the dilapidated mansion. At the top of the hill, Olivia had some neon glow stick bracelets, which was only light we were able to see because we didn't bring any flashlights, and it was so pitch black that we couldn't see anything. It had been a fairly clouded night, although it was almost a full moon because we only had a few glimpses of moonlight the entire night, and none of us thought ahead to bring any light sources. We reached the top of the hill where the house was positioned. I got a cold chill, and I was shaking. I don't know if it was the temperature outside or the fact that I was frightened, but my teeth were slightly chattering. The three of us approached the house and climbed onto the porch, and Jessica pushed me forward. "Ring the doorbell," she whispered. "I don't want to ring the doorbell," I said. She pushed me again. "Just do it." I stepped forward. My eyes had begun to adjust to the darkness, and I could see the door in front of me with an elaborated stained glass. Although my hand was shaking, I reached for the doorbell and I pressed it. Immediately, Jessica and Olivia started giggling and screaming, and they took off running away, leaving me standing on the porch. I heard a noise from the inside of the house, and I darted off the porch. I tripped over my witch's dress and fell face first in the grass on my pumpkin-shaded bucket full of candy. It all spilled onto the ground, but I was too scared to pick it up. So I threw the bucket down and trying to see my way to the driveway, but it was so dark I could hear the girls giggling and screaming in the distance somewhere ahead of me. "Those bitches," I mumbled under my breath. My feet hit the gravel on the road and my heart was pounding. Why was I so scared? I was on the road and I was safe now. I wasn't too far away from the house, but I told myself I was in a safe place and I was safe, right? And the old woman was probably in bed, and she hadn't even opened the front door. I told myself not to be afraid, and I was fine now. We were just being dumb kids. And as I was walking down, I felt a slight breeze. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, two hands started grabbing my chest from behind and something was pulling me, and I let out a scream. Something had me. I could hear it snarling and hissing as it pulled me. I tried fighting it off, and it was dragging me over to the side of the driveway, and I could see the outline of an apple tree in the moonlight. I could hear smell and some sort of rotting stench. I was only 12, but I was fighting as hard as I could. I was screaming and yelling, "Help me! Help! Please!" I tried hitting the arms off me, but I was in a combat stance, and as I tried, and I felt like I was fighting for my life. Whoever had me was not letting go, and I felt sharp nails sticking to my chest while it was pulling me toward the apple trees. "Who are you? Let me go!" The clouds must have moved away from the moon because for a moment again, the moonlight was shining down, illuminating the orchard around me, and that's when I caught the glimpse. It had its arms around me, and it was an old hag, a woman, but she looked as old and half dead, and she had flesh that looked like it was rotting away from her face, and she was still gurgling and snarling at me. I managed to twist myself loose, and the second I did, I ran, and her sharp nails digged in my back, and I ran off from the orchard. I was running on rotting apples, and I eventually fell into a pile of apples in a pile of mush, and I finally made my way to the gravel, and I did not stop running until I was on the main road. Of course, my asshole friends were posted up waiting for me, but the minute they saw me molting by, they did not laugh. I was in shock, and somehow we managed to get to the neighbor's house where the person called my parents to come pick me up, and my friends explained what had happened and how they had left me at the house. I had scratch marks on both my chest and back from the incident. My parents decided we needed to call the police and make a report. The cops thought it was probably some sort of Halloween prank, and probably some dumb teenagers trying to scare me. We ended up getting a huge lecture from the cop and our parents, and the next day was a Sunday, and I was still terrified about what just happened. And honestly, I don't think it was some dumb teenage kids messing with us. I kept telling my parents over and over that it was something else, and my mom finally told me it was enough and over, that we just need to move on and we don't need to rehash it again. By early evening, I settled into being a little bit calmer about the whole thing, and when the phone rang, my dad answered it, and after a few minutes of "Yes, I see, I understand," he came into the den where my mom looked at him while watching television or reading a book. She was sitting on her chair, and she looked up and said, "Is everything okay, George?" My dad looked pale. "What is it, George?" she asked. He looked at both of us with this pale face and said that the Deputy Richardson from last night, he went over to the welfare to check on Mrs. Murphy, and after they couldn't reach her last night for questioning, it turns out Mrs. Murphy was dead inside her house the whole time. Apparently, the coroner says he estimates roughly that she probably died back in August. He says that they still have no signs of anyone else being there at the house. And last night the house had not been broken into or anything. And the only thing that they found outside was your bucket of candy, which was all over the ground, just like you said.
Honey, didn't you say that it was an old woman who grabbed you?